my business just took off more than I ever expected it would. It started out in my spare bedroom. I would come home from work and just get on the computer,
Yeah.
fill orders. And then I started making more money than I was working for corporate America, working from my spare bedroom. So I
Mm.
quit my job, just started doing my business full time. Before you know it, I needed an extra person because I couldn't keep up with it. So I hired one person in my spare bedroom still.
Wow.
And then a few months later, I hired her husband, and it was just now like, okay, my husband is like, okay, we need to take this operation outside of the house.
Wow,
So,
that's incredible.
so at the height of it, I had about 5 full-time employees, and we were making 6 figures in revenue. So it was just
Wow.
amazing. So that was me at age 27 with a business that was doing 7 figures in revenue,
Mm.
traveling around the world, just living the American dream. So
Yeah.
I really am grateful for that, because that's something that is very unique to the United States, that you can
Mm.
achieve that within
Yeah.
less than a decade. So that was amazing.
Gosh, that is so inspiring. Was it like a physical product or
Yes,
like
it
what?
was. It was like hair extensions and beauty
Oh,
products for
okay.
women. So I actually just sold the
Yes.
business.
Yes,
I sold the
darling.
business to a Floridian not too long ago. So
Very nice. Well,
Mhm.
congratulations. I mean, gosh, that
Thank
is such
you.
a, I mean, coming from a different country and then, coming here with, $300 and just what you had in your suitcase and turning that into an, I guess, a mini empire at least. That is phenomenal. I would call it an empire.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
that
was a
is.
blessing.
Yeah, it really truly is, and it just goes to show you what you can do in America. I mean, I just
Mhm.
don't know any other place that you can just do that. I mean, there are other free nations, but America
No,
is just
it's
that.
very unique to America, and that's when I started to hear this narrative that America is systemically racist and oppressive to minorities. I was like,
Mm,
what?
right.
I couldn't believe it, because I
Yeah.
mean, so many Americans went out of their way to help me. When I
Mm,
first came to the United States, many of them were white.
mhm.
I just felt so welcome when I came to this country. I
Yeah,
never
you
felt
were
like,
probably like, "Wait, where are all these racist people at? Where
I
are
know.
they?"
I'm like, where are all these white supremacists they're talking
Right.
about?
Like, "What? I didn't even know this was happening. We got like, where is this?"
I know. It's
It is so
unbelievable.
crazy.
And when I came to the United States, this whole idea of race wasn't even a thing. It was never in the news. It was never even discussed. I
Mhm.
just grew up. I mean, I just went to college with
Yeah.
people of every race, and everybody got along, and worked in all these places, and everybody got
Mhm.
along. So I never saw this that they're talking about.
Yeah, I
So
agree because I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, you can go ahead. I was just gonna say that I started to notice that this racial narrative come in to the conversation in Obama's second term. That's when I
Mhm.
started to hear it, and I was like, "Huh?
Yep.
This is not true." And
Isn't
then,
that fascinating that it
mhm,
took the black guy, the black president, to bring in
exactly,
all of this negative race conversation instead of him, like he had such a huge opportunity to, to be the black guy to say, you know what, we've really overcome this thing. Like, no, it's not going to be perfect, but I mean, we've really come a long way. And, everybody, we pretty much get along. Instead, he does the opposite.
he did the exact opposite. But now it makes sense, because when you actually study what's happening, it really is rooted in cultural Marxism. So it
Yes.
only makes sense that he would do that, because when you
Mhm.
start studying Obama's background, he's a cultural Marxist
Yes, he
and a
is.
communist. So it only makes sense why he did that. But when I first started to notice it, I never connected those dots. But
Mm,
it was in researching for my book, and just seeing what was happening, particularly in 2020 with the Black Lives Matter,
yeah.
protests and all of these things that were happening,
Mhm.
that I really started to connect those dots of the identity politics with
Right.
the cultural Marxism. And I actually started to connect it back to, Zimbabwe, because the same thing actually happened in Zimbabwe. And I actually had never connected those dots either, because
Mm,
basically the economic collapse that we had in Zimbabwe actually started when our president pivoted from the narrative of unity, because we do have a white population in Zimbabwe.
mm-hmm,
And most of them owned a lot of farms, and they were the ones that were part of the farming community and the farming industry.
mm-hmm.
So when things started to fall apart in his government due to, socialist policies, instead of taking ownership of those policies, he basically started to scapegoat the white farmers. So it was all about, oh, I'm not your problem. The problem is the white farmers. They took all your land. So now
Wow.
I'm like, okay, that's critical race theory.
Right. That is
Exactly.
so
And that's
interesting.
it's so interesting when I started to connect those dots. I was like, it's the same, because when I grew up in Zimbabwe, we didn't have that racial narrative, that
Mm,
racial um, tension with white
mm-hmm.
people, anything. I went to school with a lot of white people. We got along,
Yeah.
Zimbabweans got along, black, white. And the president actually had a message of reconciliation after independence, because Zimbabwe was under colonial rule for
Mm-hmm.
many years, and there was a lot of racism and segregation and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But the Zimbabwean people fought a war and actually won their independence from this colonial rule. And
Wow.
when the president came to power, instead of bringing up those wounds of colonialism and so forth, he basically said that we're going to move forward as Zimbabweans, black, white, everybody's going to move forward. We're going to come together and
Hmm.
leave the past in the past. And that was
Yep.
great.
Right.
So I
Right.
grew up in a great country, capitalist, where blacks and whites, live together in harmony.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, there's a narrative shift. And it's like all of a sudden, white people are the devil, and they're the reason for every problem we have in Zimbabwe. And now it makes sense. And that's
Mm,
the exact same narrative you get from the Democrat Party. So
yeah.
you're seeing that it's the same cultural Marxism, because when you actually
Mm-hmm.
look at Marxism, it's basically rooted in pitting one group against another.
Yeah.
So in Russia, they used economics, because I guess everybody in Russia is white, so you can't really use race
Right.
to pit one group against another. So in
Right.
a country where there's racial differences, the
Mm-hmm.
Marxists will exploit the racial
Mm-hmm.
division and
Yeah.
use that to pit one group against another. So,
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah. If you read Karl Marx, and because he grew up in Germany, he was
mhm,
German, and it's like same thing. He used economics,
right.
the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. Oh, we
Mhm,
have to pull. I mean, you read Kimberly Crenshaw, who's a critical race theorist, or Derek Bell, or any of these people. They literally use the same types of phrasing that Karl Marx used, but they just put race instead of economics or labor.
exactly.
So
Exactly. It's incredible.
right. People think we're exaggerating when we say this is a Marxist communist agenda. They're like, oh, like you're being hyperbolic and it's not that serious. I can always tell if people have actually read this stuff, because if you've read what Karl Marx and Antonio Gramsci, who was a cultural Marxist, if you read their work, that they are pushing. You hear it
You
exactly the
hear it.
same
It's the
way,
exact same playbook, same narrative,
same
everything.
thing.
And what people need to understand is how dangerous that is, because
Mm,
Marxism is responsible for, they say they admit 100 million deaths, but I would
mm,
argue that it's up to a billion when you really take into consideration the starvation that happens because of this
mm.
ideology. Because it's not only just the cultural aspect, it's also the economic aspect. And I
Yes.
actually saw that play out in Zimbabwe when we had an economic collapse, and that was due to redistribution of wealth from, the white farmers to, the black population,
Mm.
which was given to people that really didn't understand how to run commercial farms and so forth. So at the end of the day, it didn't benefit anybody. It didn't benefit the black people, and it
Yeah.
didn't benefit the white people either. So it was like
Right.
a complete devastation where, the industry that was created through those commercial farms created a lot of jobs for black people. It created an industry. It created
Mm-hmm.
all these things that kept the economy going for everybody.